Hello, here's my family story, which is called My Husband Called Me Deadweight in Front of His Family, so I transferred the company shares back to my name. Do you want to know what happens when a man completely underestimates the woman who's been by his side for 15 years? Well, I'm going to tell you exactly what happened when my husband called me deadweight in front of his entire family during Thanksgiving dinner. Spoiler alert, he quickly found out who the real deadweight in this relationship was. It was Thursday, November 23rd, 2023. We were at Michael's parents' house in Denver, Colorado, surrounded by uncles, aunts, cousins, and the in-laws who had always treated me like I was an outsider who had infiltrated their family. The turkey was on the table, the wine was flowing, and there I was, as always, trying to be the perfect, discreet wife everyone expected me to be. Until the conversation turned to business. "Michael, how's the business going?" his uncle Robert asked, chewing a forkful of mashed potatoes. "I hear you guys had a great year." My husband sat up straight in his chair, that smug smile I knew so well spreading across his face. "Oh, it's going great, thanks for asking. We've managed to close some huge contracts this year. I'm practically carrying the business on my shoulders." I swallowed hard. Carrying the business on my shoulders? I nearly choked on my wine. "What about Sarah?" his sister-in-law, Jessica, asked in that falsely sweet tone she always used with me. "Is she still helping out?" Michael laughed, really laughed, like the question was the funniest thing in the world. "Oh, Sarah," he said, shaking his head. "Well, she tries, right? But let's be honest here." He looked around the table, making sure he had everyone's attention. "She's kind of a dead weight in the operation. I do all the heavy lifting, all the big sales, all the strategic decisions. She just exists there." The silence that followed was deafening. I felt the blood rush to my face, but not from embarrassment, from pure anger. 15 years. 15 years I'd been by this man's side, building something together, and he'd reduced me to this in front of his family. But I didn't say anything, not then. I just smiled politely, mumbled something about being tired, and retreated to the bedroom we were using. Let me rewind a little so you can understand the full irony of the situation. I met Michael in college in 2008. I was a senior in business school at Northwestern, and he was an MBA student. From the first time we met, he talked about his dream of owning his own technology consulting company. I fell in love not only with him, but with his vision, his ambition. I wanted to be a part of it. When we got married in 2010, I had just inherited a substantial sum from my grandmother, $800,000 to be exact. Michael was full of ideas, but zero capital. The choice was obvious. We invested everything in the company. Technological Solutions Inc. was born in 2011, in the basement of our first house in Chicago. I handled everything: administration, HR, accounting, even social media marketing. Michael was the sales guy and the strategic vision guy. It worked, we were a team, but things started to change around 2018. The company was growing, Michael was gaining recognition in the industry. And I started to notice that my contribution was being minimized. In client meetings, he would talk as if he were the sole founder. At networking events, I became Michael's wife instead of the company's co-founder. I mentioned it a few times, subtly at first. "Honey, do you remember mentioning that we started the company together?" He would always laugh, give me a little kiss on the forehead, and say something like, "Sure, honey, but you know I'll handle the technical stuff. It's easier that way." Easier for whom? What Michael didn't know, and frankly, I hadn't paid much attention to before that, was that technically, legally, I was the majority owner of the company. When we formed TSI, my lawyer, who Michael insisted we didn't need, but I hired anyway, structured everything so that since the initial investment had come entirely from my money, I owned 60% of the stock. Michael owned 40%. For years it didn't matter. We made decisions together, split everything equally. I never thought of holding that difference against him because we were partners, we were a team, until that Thanksgiving dinner. As I walked back to my room that night, I couldn't stop thinking about his words. Dead weight. As if 15 years of my life, all my initial investment, all the nights I spent organising the books while he slept, all the weekends I sacrificed helping build that company were nothing. I lay awake all night. Michael slept peacefully beside me, snoring softly, completely unaware of the bomb he had just detonated in our marriage. The next morning, over breakfast, my mother-in-law made a casual comment. "Sarah, honey, it must be comforting to know that you are financially secure with Michael taking such good care of the business." Financially secure. With my money. With my company. It was at that moment that something shifted inside me for good. It wasn't anger, it was clarity. Cold, calculated clarity. We spent the rest of the weekend pretending to be normal, but my mind was racing. On Monday, as soon as we got back to Chicago, Michael went straight to the office. I went straight to my lawyer's office. "Helen," I said to my lawyer, "I need to understand exactly what my rights are as the majority shareholder of TSI." Helen Williams was an experienced woman who had helped me with many legal matters over the years. She looked at me over the top of her glasses with that expression that said, "Finally." "Sarah, you have complete control of the company. You can make any unilateral decisions you want, including changes to the management structure, removal of directors, changes in salaries, anything." What if I wanted to transfer Michael's shares back to me? Legally, if there's no shareholders agreement preventing it, and as far as I remember, you never had one, you could do that, but it would be dramatic. Dramatic. That word echoed in my head for days. I went home that afternoon and acted as if nothing had happened. Michael was in high spirits, talking about what a success the meeting had been, what a business genius he was. I smiled, made dinner, asked about his day. For the next 2 weeks, I was meticulous. I reviewed every contract, every bank account, every company document. I discovered interesting things, like the fact that Michael had raised his own salary by 40% in the last year without consulting me. Or that he had hired his nephew for a senior consultant position, making $85,000 a year for doing basically nothing. Dead weight, he said. On Friday, December the 8th, Michael came home ecstatic. "Sarah, I have amazing news. I got that deal with Morrison Industries, $3 million in 2 years. I'm a genius." He hugged me, twirled me around the kitchen. For a moment, I almost forgot about my anger. Almost. "That's wonderful, honey," I said. "We should celebrate." "I'm already planning an office party next week. It's going to be epic. A party to celebrate his success." "Michael," I said quietly, "we need to talk." He stopped smiling. "About what?" "Sit down." He sat down at our dining room table, the same table where we had planned the company 15 years ago. "Do you remember what you said about me at Thanksgiving dinner?" He had the decency to look uncomfortable. "Sarah, I was drinking. Maybe I overdid it." "Dead weight," I repeated. "You called me dead weight." "Look, I didn't mean in front of your entire family. Sarah, you're making a mountain out of a molehill." A mountain out of a molehill. 15 years reduced to a mountain out of a molehill. I placed a folder of documents on the table. "Michael, do you know who the real owner of Technological Solutions, Inc. is?" He frowned. "Both of us, obviously." "Not exactly." I opened the folder. "I own 60% of the shares. You own 40%. "Okay, so what? It's never been a problem before."
"You were right. It wasn't a problem when we were partners, when you respected me, when you saw me as an equal." He started to look worried. "Sarah, what are you getting at?" I slid a document toward him. I'm getting at the fact that as the majority shareholder, I made some decisions about the company. Michael read it quickly, and I saw the exact moment it hit him. His face went white. You transferred my shares to you. I did. All of them, yesterday afternoon. You're now an employee of the company, not a partner anymore. That's crazy. You can't do that. Yes, I can, and I did. I consulted 3 different lawyers to make sure. He stood up abruptly, his hands shaking. Sarah, you're being unreasonable. Let's talk about this. We can work it out. Whack it out. I laughed. It was the first time I'd genuinely laughed in weeks. Michael, you've spent years belittling me, years making me feel irrelevant in the company I funded. You called me dead weight in front of your family. There's nothing to fix. But I built this company. I made the sales. I brought in the customers with my seed money in the company I funded, using the management structure I kept running. He began pacing back and forth, desperate. Okay, I admit I overdid it at dinner. I apologize, okay? Can we take this back? No. Sarah, be reasonable. I'm being perfectly reasonable, Michael. I'm being a businesswoman making a strategic decision about my company. Your company? It was our company. It was ours when you treated me like a partner. Now it's mine. He stopped in front of me, his eyes filling with tears, not from sadness but from financial despair. Sarah, please, I need these shares. They're my financial security. Your financial security? I slowly stood up. That's funny. Your mother told me exactly that I should feel comforted by being financially secure because of your job. Well, now you're going to find out what it's really like to depend on someone else financially. This is revenge. No, Michael, this is consequence. He stood there, processing the reality of the situation. The company he thought was his, that he ran, that he bragged about, was never really his. Are you going to fire me? He asked, his voice small. I thought for a moment. No. You're good at what you do, I'll admit. But your salary will go back to what it was before that raise you gave yourself without consulting me, and your nephew will have to find another job. Sarah, and one last thing, Michael. I walked over to him. Next time someone asks about the company, you're going to make it very clear that it was founded and is owned by Sarah Mitchell. Not we, not I. Sarah Mitchell. Got it? He nodded, defeated. 6 months later, I'm here telling you this story. Michael still works at the company. He's really good at what he does, and I'm not vindictive enough to completely destroy his life. But our dynamic has completely changed. He treats me with respect. He talks about me as the founder and CEO of the company, and he's never made a derogatory comment about my contribution again. Oh, and we're getting a divorce. Amicably, oddly enough. I think deep down he knows he deserved it. The moral of the story? Never underestimate the person who's right next to you, especially if they're the ones who finance the entire life you think you built on your own. Sometimes the dead weight is exactly who you least expect. If you like this video, leave a like, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell so you don't miss any videos. Leave your opinion in the comments. I'll be here and see you next time.